Hey, 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 everyone. Welcome back to Strange Minds 6. I'm your host, Ruby, and today we're going to be reading more of Creepers, the Scarecrow by Edgar J. Hyde. Where we last left off was Chapter 4, Gotta Know More. And we found out in the previous chapter that the mysterious man was actually a well-known thief and just a person who liked to cause a lot of trouble. But apparently his tongue was missing and he was currently in a coma for some reason. So Officer Collins went back to the house of the Davies to see if they knew anything. But of course, Mr. Davies was furious and just shouted that it was absurd that they didn't know anything, that they actually just caught the man within the barn. But for some reason, young David looked out into the field, far, far into the field, and saw the old farm scarecrow. But he didn't realize at the time what he was looking at. He thought to himself, what if there really was a monster? But no, that can't be, can it? But without further ado, my dear friends, grab a snack, grab a drink, or sit back and relax, and let's get to it. David stared out the window. He couldn't take his eyes off the scarecrow looming out there. The scarecrow stood in an uncultivated field next to the house. It was a field that his father still hadn't had time to work on. It had always seemed strange to David that the only scarecrow on the farm stood in a field that didn't need one. His dad had continually said that he was going to move it, but like many other jobs on the farm, it just hadn't been done. David was confused, and he was becoming a little scared. As he stared at the figure in the field, he began to think of his old dog. He had been satisfied with his dad's version of the dog's disappearance. After all, the old dog had been constantly chasing foxes, letting and getting stuck in foxholes was a regular demise for overzealous hounds. However, he had never mentioned to anyone, especially his dad, the other version that had been suggested for the dog's absence. 2 days after the dog had gone missing, David had been standing on the road outside the farm waiting for the school bus. He was upset. His dog had never disappeared before. His dad had told him that he would probably never see his old friend again. His sisters, as usual, were late and hadn't come out yet. An old man had appeared suddenly at his side, the smell of alcohol announcing his arrival as much as anything. He had been sleeping under a nearby hedge. Old Jonesy was a well-known local celebrity. He was a down-and-out drunk, rarely sober enough to recognize whether it was night or day. However, he could often bring a smile to your face with his quick wit and his many stories. "Ah, young Davy, how are you? What's wrong? Why so glum?" Jonesy had asked, noticing the boy's concerned face. "We haven't seen Sandy, our dog, since yesterday evening. He's disappeared. David had replied. Jonesy's grin left his face and was replaced with a deep frown. Well, son, you'll never see him again. He's gone for sure. Gone forever. The old man mumbled. Gone? What do you mean? David had pressed, a little agitated. The old man put his arm around David. The smell of stale alcohol was overpowering. He continued. He ran off. I saw him with my own eyes. Chased off by that wooden thing, that Scarecrow over there. The old man jerked his head in the direction of the farm and continued. That thing chased him all the way over the fields. The animal was howling like a banshee. No, you won't see him again. David had laughed at the time. The thought of the Scarecrow running across his dad's fields, chasing after his old dog, was the sort of crazy story old Jonesy was famous for. But as David recalled the encounter with the old man now, he wasn't laughing. In fact, he was beginning to feel more and more scared. Morrison's note had talked about a wooden monster, a scarecrow. Was it a coincidence? Just nonsense spoken by two madmen? He couldn't tell his dad about old Jonesy's story. He would just laugh at him. But now, after reading Morrison's note, it was all becoming a little weird. David decided he had to find old Jonesy again. He had to talk to him about what the old man had seen that night. As he headed out the door, David glanced at the window and peered at the wooden shape in the field and shook his head. He then ran to the shed beside the house, pulled out his bike, and rode off as fast as he could toward town. It usually took David about 20 minutes to ride into town, but this journey was less than half that. Jonesy had a number of usual hangouts in town during the day. He would normally be trying to make some money or be spending money on his own staple diet of cheap wine. It didn't take David long to catch sight of him. He was propped up at the corner of one of the town's two bars, held upright by a combination of the side of the building and a large overflowing trash can. David quickly rode over and shouted to the old man. The old man didn't respond. David climbed off his bike and walked slowly to the corner of the bar. Still, the old man's head was down and slumped on his chest. Jonesy, it's me, Davy. I have to talk to you, David said, approaching the old man. Jonesy, are you okay? It's me, Davy, he added, becoming a little agitated by the old man's lack of response. Finally, the old man raised his head. David was instantly shocked. Jonesy looked into his eyes. David immediately recognized the look in the old man's eyes. It was the same frightened stare that he had seen on Morrison's face in the barn. David hesitated, almost too scared to speak. Jonesy, what happened? Are you okay? David asked, taking the old man's arm. The old man started to shake his head, and David spotted tears welling up in his eyes. The old man started to open his mouth. David spotted for the first time the dried blood clinging to the old man's beard. As he opened his mouth wider, David gasped and staggered back. Just like Morrison, Jonesy's tongue was gone. And that, my dear friends, is the end of Chapter 4. Tune in next video for Chapter 5, A Regular Farm Scarecrow.